So I hope you've all had a great day, because today I'm doing the video that I promised. It isn't about Elden Ring and the Elden Ring DLC because Harmon refused to talk about it, but we're gonna do the next best thing. And that is him complaining about an emulator. I know, shocking. His greatest enemy. A place to play any game that you choose on your PC or other platform to run that emulator. It's so scary to Harmon that he has to make a 10-minute video about it. And what should we take away from this 10-minute video? Well, it's everything that we already knew. I kinda just want to eat the barrel of a gun, you know? It's just asking too much to watch 10 minutes of it, so hopefully we can get through most of his video, but at the same time, watch him blame emulators for piracy, as you know, clearly he's a very smart individual that can tell the difference between what they are. So I don't really have anything else I want to add, so if you don't rock and stone, you ain't coming home. Let's get started with the video.
A couple of days ago, Nintendo confirmed that they were filing a lawsuit against Nintendo Switch emulator yuzu. And a lot of people threw up their hands and tried to tell you that, like, Nintendo can't do that.
Have you ever noticed that Harmon always has like this weird tendency to make weird faces? Also, I made this image because it's pretty common for him to make weird faces, and I don't know, it's the first thing that came to my mind as soon as he fucking did it, so enjoy. And to my knowledge, Nintendo has no legal ground, as unless they're using code from Nintendo games or distributing Nintendo products, whether they're new or old, then that would lead to legal issues, but all they're doing is distributing a program, a bunch of files, that allow you to run those games on other platforms, not distributing the games themselves, and to my knowledge, emulation is fair use, they're allowed to do as they please. And since Nintendo is not going out of their way to actually preserve any of the games, especially their old ones, I have no issue with them doing this. But either way, this is just going to create more emulators. If one disappears, another two will just show up, as people really want to play their games on these other platforms, or just get to play those old games that they never could again.
There is nothing wrong with emulation as long as you don't pirate the games.
Personally, I have no issue with piracy, because at least then you actually own your games compared to the age that we live in now where you pretty much own nothing that you purchase, so I'm kinda fine with it. But who goes out of their way to purchase modern games? I don't know about old games, but old games are understandable. You would go out of your way to do them because maybe they're not being distributed anymore. But new games, that doesn't make any sense. Who would go out of their way to do that? No one would, because it's just a waste of time. You're putting all this extra effort in for nothing. And then if you don't like the game, you can usually refund it. Take this from someone that went out of his way to get a PS4 and Bloodborne just to get it working on PC. And honestly, who the fuck goes out of their way to like find an old copy of a game when you can get like that shit for practically free now? Like that's the only time you'll ever pirate a game, because most of the time if you're trying to get these old versions of games, they're gonna cost you like 400, 500, even 1,000 in Australia. And do you want to know why people pirate? It's because of this singular image. That is why. And even in some countries, it may just be cheaper to pirate a game, like in Brazil. Brazil is often the largest place that pirating games exist because games are way too expensive. But this right here is a great example of how I want to get my hands on the original Prepare to Die edition for Dark Souls 1. And yet, I can't do that because it's nearly fucking $600. Why the fuck would I spend that much when I can just pirate the game? Are you high? Do you really want to live in a world where that's your only option? That you can go out of your way to find an old game that you enjoyed? That may be different from a remastered version. For example, in the Prepare to Die edition, it has a lot of bugs and quirks that make the game truly feel special. For example, there are a lot of cool glitches that go around the game that make it genuinely fun to play. And I want to experience those again. That's because some of these glitches are truly game-breaking from the 1.0 version, and I really just want to give that a try again because oh my god, who doesn't want to throw a shield that does nearly 1,000 damage? That shit was different back in the day, and I want to do that again. And I know that was a bit off topic, but I think it gives you a good enough idea of why emulation and piracy can be so important, especially when it comes down to either the preservation of an original version of that game to experience all of its bugs and glitches, or to actually play an old game that can't be bought anymore. So I'm gonna stop repeating myself and let's just move on to the next clip.
Right? Like, it's just coping and seething, right? I've talked about this for a long time, but
are you sure it's us that is coping and seething? If emulation is constantly on your mind, it may not be us, it may be just you.
there's nothing legal about the current state of emulators, right?
And how are they legal? What are they supposed to do? Not run games on them? How are you meant to make these legal? They're the same as that they normally are. If you take one down, another one will just take their place, as most of them are open source, so they all usually run the same and do the exact same thing. How are they any different from other emulators? They emulate games. Like, I am just so confused how you can word this as emulators being different from what they used to be. It is just so confusing, the logic that you use in most of these videos that just makes no sense. Why do you even bother?
Because in order to stay on top of the new releases, they have to ask for donations. In order to get around all the additional copyright protection, they have to be on call like near constantly.
Who really goes out of their way to put new games through an emulator? If it's Nintendo games, maybe that would make sense, but overall, most people aren't gonna do it unless they're very poor and have to pirate the games. Not many people are gonna do it, Harmon. It isn't the reason. Nintendo's just a bunch of pussies and can't handle that people want to play their games on another platform. That's a skill issue on them. Stop defending them.
Updating the software, right? In order to get a hold of these games to play them on your emulators, like, you're going to have to pirate them.
If you want any confirmation that he has no clue what he's talking about, that long pause right there is a great example, and on top of that, it's not really good that he doesn't edit that out, but you know, I can't judge him. People somehow actually watch him because apparently they believe he has the right opinion, so I don't know, do with that as what you will, but if that little pause right there is nothing to give you an example of how stupid he is and doesn't really know what he's talking about, that is an example right there.
Right. And these are all topics that everyone's just kind of like skirting around. Like, people just kind of refuse to admit it. It's why you see people like throw around terms like legal emulation, implying that they buy the games but like just don't play them on the original hardware.
I literally do that, Harmon. That's what I did for Bloodborne. You're implying it like that no one actually does it. Yes, people do it. If I do it, I'm sure other people do it. Like, is that really hard for you to comprehend? How can you be that stupid? I don't get it. You always, like, say some of the most dumbest shit and expect people to agree with you. And it's sad because there are people that actually do.
Right? Like, they're desperately trying to like fool people into thinking that emulation is some like completely legal white zone where there's nothing wrong with it, and that they're doing everything that they're supposed to do in order to play these games on other hardware. Right?
They are doing everything correct, as long as they do not distribute the game files themselves. They're allowed to make that emulator to emulate stuff on other platforms. It's just how it is. They're allowed to, as long as they do not distribute any source code, any game files, or anything else to do with it, which would consider that pirating.
It's been nothing but a cope and nothing but a seed, right? The issue up until now is that every single time like an emulator or a distributor gets taken down, typically what happens is that another one pops up, right?
It makes you wonder, why is Nintendo even bothering to sue this emulator? Why would they even bother suing Yuzu at all, when another one will just probably pop up using the exact same source code? It just seems like a really big waste of time and a money sink on Nintendo's part, as their goal is probably just to make them waste a bunch of money so the emulator has to shut down. But even then, someone else will just show up. I don't get it. There just seems to be no point or logic behind this. Or maybe, as I think about it, it's maybe just setting the expectation that you're allowed to sue emulators so you can shut them down if you don't want them distributing older games, so you can distribute them to make more money. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
It's been happening for a long time, right? But now, with Yuzu getting attacked, with Nintendo going after Yuzu, finally filing that lawsuit, emphasizing how Yuzu drives piracy, how Tears of the Kingdom was a major driving force in getting people to support Yuzu.
You know, when Tears of the Kingdom came out, I did have a lot of friends use emulators to get it running on PC, but I've never heard Yuzu ever used, and from what other content creators have said, it didn't really run well. But then again, I've never used Yuzu, so I wouldn't know anything about it.
How the company benefits from from major Nintendo releases, how desperate people are in like shilling Yuzu online, right? Like, it's becoming more and more apparent to in the legal side of things that the current state of emulators, this idea that you can just play everything Nintendo releases on PC, is not sustainable, right?
Okay then, Harmon, tell that to the 50 new emulators that will probably show up when yuzu goes down.
It isn't rooted in reality at all. There are all these legal issues involved with getting Nintendo games on the PC, to the point where like anybody who knows anything about the process, anybody who knows anything about it, like they are well aware that what they're doing is illegal.
And how is it illegal? They're just providing software for you to do it yourself. Yes, you could argue in that standpoint, providing that software and, possibly providing the ROMs or teaching you how to do it could be an issue, but I don't see that as an issue, as they're the ones providing the game.
And I think to a certain extent that people like Mudahar, who are coming out and like crying about this, they know that too, right? They know it's over, right? Once Yuzu is taken out, and I think it's safe to say that they will be taken out.
I'm gonna have to press X to doubt, as I don't think they're going to win that legal action. I don't. I mean, I'm no fucking lawyer, but I don't think they're gonna win it, as most of their arguments are pretty flimsy. Like, imagine saying, oh, we believe that they've done this, that they're the ones making all this an issue, then you look at like 500 different other emulators that probably do the exact same thing, so I don't know why they're picking yuzu out of every other emulator. Maybe it's because it's the biggest one.
That will open the floodgates to Nintendo taking down other patrons, right? Other Patreons that exist to take money from PC gamers who want to play Nintendo games, right? That is going to open the floodgates to that, and once that happens, it's going to be more and more difficult for these people to get away with what they do.
I won't lie, I probably think it will actually help to motivate people continue do it, and at the same time, I think you should flex the fact that people want to play Nintendo games, just not buy the hardware, Harmon. At this point, all the companies just need to stop exclusivity. It doesn't help anyone, just let us play on whatever platform we want. I'm not gonna buy a Nintendo Switch to play your games.
Right? And going forward, you won't be able to accept money, right? Going forward, there's going to be severe issues in doing what you've been doing for the past couple of years, right?
I've said it many times and I'll say it again. I'm scared you have a right to vote, because you go out of your way to cap for a company that doesn't even care for you. How can you vote for a political leader?
Right? Because what you're doing is illegal.
And you are yet to explain to us why it is illegal. You never explain why and how these things are a problem. You just say that they are a problem.
The issue, I think, is that it hasn't really been demonstrated just the current modern, like how the modern pirating scene affects actual hardware, right? Actual performance sales. Because a big cope for these people is that like, oh, we don't affect hardware sales. We don't.
I don't have enough information to really speak upon this, as I don't know how rampant piracy is, but of course they're adding a bunch of DRM in and a bunch of other things to prevent piracy, so of course it's an issue. But like I've stated, there are a lot of countries that can't pay for games. And if companies want to prevent piracy, it's a very simple fix. Put a permanent discount on lower income countries, allowing them to get extra money instead of people pirating the games. It's just that simple. It's been proven to work with some indie games that do it.
Affect anything. If Nintendo wanted to sell more hardware, they should just make better hardware.
Well, of course, Nintendo Switch is one of the greatest consoles that Nintendo's ever had. It sells so many copies and will probably outperform both PS5 and Xbox Series X. It always seems to perform well when it comes to selling those consoles, and I'm sure they want to capitalize on a more powerful piece of hardware, after seeing what the Steam Deck can do.
Again, it's just a cope and a seed, right? What I expect to happen going forward, I do think that the big thing, as emulators become more and more cracked down on, as it becomes harder and harder to get hold of ROMs, as it becomes harder and harder to support people who are trying to build emulators, like emulation is going to become more and more unviable, and it already is, right? Because it's already commonly accepted that you can't download games off the internet.
Harmon, it's not gonna disappear no matter how much you want it. The sheer dedication to play these games on another platform or to preserve these games will continue. There doesn't need to be a financial benefit to it.
Right. But now we're entering territory where like it's companies like Yuzu that use Nintendo's code in their hardware, like in their software, like they can't keep up with the farce. They can't keep up the illusion of what they're doing is completely legal. And as a result of that, there are going to be people who are like driven away for that reason, who don't want to support it for that reason, who don't want to be implicated in it.
From what I've heard, they don't use any of Nintendo's code, as that would be grounds for actual legal issues. And from what everyone else has said and from what I've looked into, most emulators don't need to use code. It can just be easily built in Python and C++. It's not that hard to build something like that. It's just a very time-consuming process.
For that reason. And as a result of that, more and more we're going to see emulators just kind of go away.
And as more and more of those emulators disappear, Harmon, you will see more and more of those emulators coming to replace them. I don't know why it's so hard for you to comprehend that. It's just that simple. More and more will show up. No matter how many times Nintendo or any other company tries to take that legal action, there will just be more. People want to play those games on those platforms. I know I'm repeating myself again, but it's that simple to explain, and it's not going to disappear.
Like, it will not be a viable way to play Nintendo games going forward. And that's been true for a long time, but what we've been seeing lately is just kind of this stubborn like denial that that's the case, right? You know, how obvious was it to like people like me?
You wanna know why people are denying it? Because nobody wants to be stuck on a singular platform, playing those certain games that are stuck to that platform. It's not a world that anyone wants to live in. Why would you want to live in that world? We're finally leaving it, and we don't want to go back to it. It sucks. I don't want to be forced to play Halo on just an Xbox. I want to be able to play that on any platform I choose to go to, including PlayStation. I am so mentally drained after dealing with Harmon. I do not want to do this video anymore. I'm just gonna leave it here. You got 16 minutes of me doing a schizo ramble about how Harmon's as dumb as a rock, so I guess I'll leave it here. Take care, goodbye, see you in the next video.